Hey, Brett, I'm so excited to welcome you to Miracles Happen today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be, I think, a little wild story. So I'm excited for this.
Good, good. Hope I don't offend anyone.
Oh, you can't on my podcast. No, my listeners are like, cool, we like this.
All right, good.
So to begin with, tell us a little bit like a mini bio of sorts. Like, who are you and what do you do and why are you here today?
All right. Well, as you know, my name is Brett Russo. I used to live in New York City, which is where a lot of the book takes place. I'm in New Jersey now, and I run our family printing company with my twin brother. It's a commercial printing company. And that's it. I married my husband. We went to college together. We got reacquainted on Facebook about 15 years after we graduated.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and we dated from New York to Hong Kong for about 6 months.
Oh
And
my God.
then we moved back, we got engaged, and the rest is history. So
Very
now we
cool.
have, two sons, not to be a spoiler alert.
I
And
know, right?
And that's it. I just finished writing this book about my experience through IVF. It was obviously a very impactful experience for me. Became a little bit of a passion project for myself and for anyone else going through it. So I'm excited to be here to talk about it.
Yeah, this is going to be, and the title is, it's like, it's so awesome. As soon as I
People
actually
either
told my,
get it or they don't get it. And it's so funny because, all my IVF girls get it, but other people like, do I have to read on? I'm like, yeah, I guess read on. If you don't
yeah,
know it yet, read on.
yeah, yeah. I actually was like, I told my husband, I was like, okay, so I'm going to interview this woman who wrote this book about IVF called The Underwear in My Shoe. I was like, you know what that means? And he's like, um, no, 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 I don't. I'm like, okay, only IVF people would get it. Here's why, so
Everyone thinks it's like a sexual reference. I'm like, no, it's really not.
no,
Um,
no.
yeah, and yeah, it's called The Underwear in My Shoe, and it was actually probably one of the first. It came to me very early on when we were going through a lot of our treatments.
Mhm.
You take off your pants, you step up on the table, and you just sit there. And I used to just stare at my shoes and season to season to season, just shoving my underwear in. It's just, I think there's a lot of things that play there. One, the frustration of just sitting there and seeing your underwear and your beautiful shoes. It's not the way it's
Mhm.
supposed to be a few times a week. Um,
Mhm.
and then I also want to demonstrate that even how you're going through this huge life changing and altering thing, but you don't lose those innate feelings of being a woman and wanting to feel sexy in front of your husband or wanting the doctor to not see dirty underwear, or geeky
Right,
underwear,
right.
all these things that are still in play. Those don't eliminate themselves from the equation just because you're going through infertility. So I kind of wanted to drag that all together when you're trying to still hold on to a piece of yourself, physically,
Yes,
emotional during all this.
yes. And I was gonna say, there's absolutely nothing sexual about it. It's like,
I
damn,
know.
this blows. I wish it
Oh,
were.
I know. I know. I wish it was a fun night out, but it's not.
Turns out it's a really horrible morning where I'm wanted.
Mhm.
So what prompted you to write the story?
Well, it was funny when I first started going through it and we started having some trouble. I started writing it down really for myself, but I think it was just a way for me to understand some of the emotions that I was feeling. And as we got deeper into it, if something bad would happen, I'd say, all right, at least there's another chapter out of it. Because I really didn't think I'd have a story to tell when I started writing this. I truly didn't. I thought I'd be in and out in this game, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. And we went through it. We went through it. I stopped writing for a while. And then when we did become pregnant, I posted something on Facebook late at night saying, we're pregnant. I don't say this for you to envy me. We had trouble. And, if anyone else is out there having trouble, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
hang in there. I went to bed. When I woke up, I had about 25 private messages and over like 400 or 500 comments and likes. And it was from all these women out there saying, I'm going through this too. I don't know where to turn. What was your story? And it got people talking. And in that moment, I knew I had to finish this book. And it
Definitely.
became not about me anymore, but for everyone else out there. Because when I was going through it, I felt really isolated. I mean, really isolated. And people that I usually reach out to, you know, your people, weren't understanding. And I feel like the best, unfortunately, it was later in my process, but I connected most with the women that were going through it and people that I ended up connecting with through the way. And I wanted to do that for other women, because as the more people I talk to, even though everyone's stories are different, the emotions are the same and what you're going through is the same. And it's so important to talk it out and be there for each other. And that was my passion behind this book from the start. And I'm so happy that now that it's written, I'm getting those same messages and it's doing what it's supposed to do.
So wonderful and inspiring. Um, I I didn't get, I was mentioning before that I didn't get your book yet. So I'm like, I'm so excited to read it. But I read the reviews, some of the reviews on Amazon. And first of all, your publisher said to me that she would describe it as a Sex in the City, but like in IVF world. I'm like, yes, that's for me. And then the other readers that I read their reviews were saying all kinds of things like, it's freaking hilarious and I cried my eyes out too. So it's like this great combo of nostalgia and like comic moments. So I am looking
Want
so
it to be. Yeah, I'm glad. You know, I didn't want it to be, you know, IVF is dark. There's no way around it. And people that are going through it need to know that they're not alone. And the people that are not going through it, I think really need to know what's going on, because I think it's hard to connect with someone in your office going through it, or your sister-in-law or your friend. It's hard to know what to say or to even know what they're going through. And, but you have to laugh too. It can't just be this experience where you're in the dark. And that's, I wanted my readers to have a little bit of a comic relief. You know, it's not a comedy, but it's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna die reading it. So I wanted
right.
you to enjoy it as well, you know.
Yeah. Well, do tell if you can give us, obviously it's not going to be every single detail that you write in the book, but I'm looking so forward to hearing your story. So tell us about it.
Well, basically, you know, I started my journey. I waited in life to have to get married. I did not want to settle. I was very into my career. I was kind of one of these people that was like, yeah, I want a family, or yeah, you know, the right guy has to come along. I'm not going to settle. I was very vocal about that, ignoring my mother's plea to freeze my eggs. You know, I don't need to do that. So anyways, I met my husband later in life, and we met, I was 35. I remember going to the gynecologist in New York City and asking her, listen, I just, you know, got engaged. I know I'm a little later in life. Do I have anything to worry about? She goes, you're not high risk in New York. Don't worry about it.
Mm.
So even then I was like, oh, okay. So we got married. I took a year off. We didn't try, you know, to have a baby. I said, let's get to know each other even better, because we were only together about, you know, 9 months before we got married. And that's what we did. We enjoyed a year. We started trying. And at first it was great, you know, fun, making up songs, doing everything. And then, of course, it became the elephant in the room where, you know, nobody wants to have sex, but you have to. And you're like starting to panic, like, okay, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. We were approaching on a year of nothing. And I said, all right, let's go just get checked out. You know, I knew my age. I didn't know why my age played a role. I knew nothing about the process. Never thought it would be me. You know, was an athlete, had a normal period. I mean, I really like, you know, I'm healthy. Like I really never thought, even at that point, I'm like, I just need a little boost. We go there. I realize how much age does play a factor in your quality of your eggs. In my situation, we were unexplained, which led me to believe we'd be fine. We'd be in and out. You know, my husband's sperm was fine. We did 2 IUIs that failed, and that was pretty devastating. I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
this really means I may be an IVF, you know, going into IVF. So
Mhm.
we did our first round of IVF. we pulled, I think, like 4 eggs or something like that. And I thought you pulled like 30 and
Yeah.
you freeze them and you're going to have babies. I could have 4 kids. I had no idea there were multiple rounds. I had no idea that the numbers could vary. I was devastated. They ended up, I think, only taking out 3 eggs. And then, as your listeners probably, or your viewers know, you get less and less as you go along in the process. And that was absolutely devastating to me. We had 1 egg to go through testing, and then it didn't pass. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on here? Like, this is not me. This is, but still, I was like, you know what? My body's used to it now. Let's do it. We'll do another round. We did another round right away. Another round, nothing. The eggs were just, they were not quality eggs. They were only pulling 2, 3, Finally, on our 4th round, we ended up with 2 viable embryos. I was thrilled about. And then I did a 5th round just to see if they're, because at that point they were saying you really need 2 embryos for every 1 pregnancy. And I did want to have, a shot at, multiple children. But the 5th round was a disaster. So that's the basic IVF story. Obviously there was so many emotions. I mean, I have a twin brother who I'm as close with as you can be, and they got pregnant on their first try.
Oh my.
Right during the year of all of this going on. So it's just, I hear so many people saying, oh, now that I'm having trouble, everyone around me is pregnant. And I don't know why that happens. Maybe your eyes are just open to it, but it is the truth. And it is hard. It's hard on them too. And it's hard on you. But this, big part of that in the book, forth of having to deal with that as well. Especially me, like I didn't care. I wasn't stressed. My sister-in-law was very, taking prenatal vitamins before they were even trying, and, one of those. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh, well, she's super stressed. She's not going to, and then she gets pregnant, and I'm like, this little raisin, like,
oh, shit.
Oh, boy. But, the book basically takes you on the roller coaster of the emotions. I think that's what upended me the most was, if you knew the ending, you could go through the process, right? But none of us know our ending. We don't know how it's going to end. We don't know if it's going to work for us. We don't know what that's about, and that's the scary part. And I think that that's what people don't truly understand is the ups and downs. So many people are so quick to say, oh, just go on vacation, or whatever it is, don't stress and it will happen. And, here they're looking at you with 4 kids that they had, they farted in the right direction and got pregnant. And I'm supposed to totally trust in what you're saying, like they would be handling it any differently. And that was the hard part for me. I think that it was just hard. I felt extremely alone. I had a good support group. I was very lucky. My twin brother, my husband, my mother. But it's hard, and it's hard for the women out there when you think, you go through this whole thing, right? And then you get to your transfer and it doesn't work for no reason. Or, you're going to retrieval after retrieval, and it's hard. It's physically hard. Your life is on hold. And, it's hard to not feel hopeless. You almost feel guilty feeling positive sometimes, like, oh, this is going to work. You don't have the right to say that sometimes. You're like, oh, is it? I don't know.
Right. Or if I feel like it's hopeful, then it'll be worse when it doesn't work. It's all these thoughts go through your head. I'm wondering how your brother, because you said it's hard for everybody, not just us, but it's hard for them too. And I'm wondering about that. How was it for like your brother and your support system, really? How did they respond to all of this?
My brother was in a rough situation, obviously, because they were pregnant, and we worked together. So every bad result he was there for. I mean, he was physically there for every crying in the office, and me, they're deep tears. We've been there. They're not just, oh, let me just, all right, let's go out to the meeting. I mean, it's day ruiner tears.
Yes.
And I think that he was carrying a lot of that grief with us. And for whatever reason, I felt comfort in that. It was hard for me to talk to people that could dismiss it. I was very jealous that they could just forget about it because it's all encompassing. And I felt that he was very much sharing the grief with me. And for some reason that felt good. He would also say, all right, that's it. Let's go. We got to move on. We got to move on. He wouldn't let me be in that pity party too long.
Yeah. And that was helpful.
Yeah, it was helpful. Sometimes you need a little slap in the face. I think I didn't realize how much he was grieving with me until I finally got the news that I was pregnant, and he just sat in his chair and cried like a baby. And I'd never seen him cry before. And that was, I realized like how much, I think the people in our lives, we're so quick to judge them as not caring. But I just think that they don't know what to say. And it's hard. Even I don't know what to say to people now that, I'm having a lot of conversations. And when you're talking to someone that's been through it, you don't even care what they say. They're right, because they've had the experience and it kind of justifies what they're going to tell you. But it's hard, your friends may back off a little, and that's okay. It doesn't mean they don't care. It just means that it's a really tough thing to go through as someone.
Yeah. And so there's two, I have like 100 questions in my head, but I'm going to stick with the top two. So one of them was, did you have the experience of losing any friends through this experience at all?
It's a hard question to answer. I don't think I lost friends, but I definitely lost them temporarily.
Okay.
I definitely felt at the time, now I have a different understanding of it, now that I'm a little bit further away from the grief portion of it. I did feel a little bit thrown to the side a little bit. And that wasn't because of them. That was just because in my mind, I needed more. And they didn't know that, and they didn't know what to say. And I think that, I had a few cousins that were very, very there for me. I also had two friends, one in particular that went through it, a college friend of mine, and she was there for every single appointment, on the phone and texting and sending things. And you realize you don't need 100 friends. And the more people I told, the more people expected updates. And I didn't want to update people that I didn't have information for. And that was heartbreaking. Like, I didn't want people to know because I didn't want them to follow up.
Yeah.
So I didn't have good news to tell. And that it was horrible to say, this is great. We have, 5 eggs, blah, blah. And then a month later saying, yeah, it didn't work. Because that's devastating. You can barely tell yourself, let alone go through this, snow chain of people. So
yeah, you have to relive it every time you retell it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say I lost friends. I definitely had friends that I thought would respond a little more intimately, but I realized that's okay. That's okay they didn't. And now that I'm a mother, I realize how hard it is to be a young mother and how much time consuming and emotional it is on its own. So sometimes, people may not have time. They're in the middle of their own stuff too, and that's okay,
Right. Of course, when you're in the middle of a really big thing like this, it's like, fuck them.
I know. And then nobody understands. They're not allowed to have any problem. And if they have kids, they are not allowed to complain,
That's right. That's right.
Mother was amazing. Yeah, exactly. You don't get it. You don't get to be sad about anything.
No, not if you're mom.
Exactly.
So the other question I had was, so you mentioned like, now that you're a mom, or now you don't even know sometimes what to say to people who are going through this. I've talked about like survivor's guilt, right, on my podcast before. And I'm wondering, that sounds kind of familiar to that. Do you ever have this like a negative feeling or like guilty feeling, like I'm on the other side of this and they're still in the trenches, and wondering how you deal with that?
Well, there's two parts actually that I want to talk about with that. One was after I got pregnant, I had a hard time being excited. It was tough on me because I was way too close to the grief. I felt like someone hopped a switch and you're supposed to just be okay and excited. And, I was nervous that the next shoe was going to drop, obviously. But aside from that, I was also feeling like, well, what do I do with all this grief? I mean, I was dark for, almost 2 years. And what do I do with that? And I think at one point, which I talked to in the book, is I found all these needles when I was cleaning my house, and I finally threw them out and just had a huge cry with myself. And I was able to kind of just say, okay, you can forgive yourself for moving on, and even complaining about being pregnant or complaining about mom things. I mean, there's a guilt there, right? Because you're saying, oh, well, I wanted this, and but they're separate things. And I think that you're in different stages, of your life. And so I think, when I first got pregnant, I definitely had the guilt thing. And then the second thing, my biggest fear in writing this book was not connecting with people that had endings that weren't mine, or people that had a harder story than I did. And that was one of my biggest fears. But as you read on, you realize becoming a mother is so much more than getting pregnant. And I think that a huge part of this process is being at peace with that. And there's a grieving process to get there. And, I did have to start that as well. And I think that it's important to say to yourself, it's okay to change your ending. It's okay to let go of the vision that you had maybe as a little girl of what you thought being a mother was. And it's okay to change that ending, because what you realize is that being a mother is not about getting pregnant. It's about being a mother. And this whole process that we're going through will make you a great mother, will make you have the perspective that maybe a lot of people aren't going to have. And so in terms of that, I mean, I think that was another thing that, not that I was guilty about, but I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't, I didn't want to alienate anyone that had a different, but as we talked about, everyone that has different endings, it doesn't matter. You're still in that puddle of emotional wreckage and all that. And I think that bonds us no matter what the ending is,
Absolutely. Even people that choose to, or it's not child-free by choice really, but people who choose to end their, journey to a baby and decide to live without children, it's still that same, darkness, that really raw, dark place that is the fertility world.
The word that comes to my mind, I've obviously have gotten so many messages and connected with so many people over this because of the book. And you hear things like, I went through this and it nearly broke me.
Yes.
Going through this and it's breaking me.
Yes.
But it never officially breaks you. Your people seem to be strong and they get through it and they come out on the other side as this braver woman that I think with this human awareness of struggle and no matter what people are going through. And I think that that's an incredible, thing that happens during this process where you get to a point where you say, wait, am I actually happy I went through this? Obviously at the end, when you're in it, you don't, it's horrible. And the thought of having another round or another surgery or another, whatever your thing is heartbreaking and sickening. But I do think it gives you a level of human awareness. It teaches you things about yourself. And I think it's, I think there are positives that come out of it. I really do.
Yeah. Now you're talking about my book. My book is called Transcending Infertility. It's about post-traumatic growth, the ways in which you are better because of this experience. And just like you, I hear from people all the time, some people are like, fucking fertility, I'm not grateful for it. And I still feel like, a better person in these ways. And other people like myself, I hadn't even become a mother yet. And I was so much better. I was a better version of myself. So I think it can happen still when you're in the midst of another freaking cycle and you're like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm still a better human because I relate to other people this way. And I'm, relating to myself this way. I know these things about myself now. So both can exist at the same time. And I love that you referenced that spontaneously just now, because it just speaks to the possibility of people being able to recognize these things within themselves.
And it makes you more conscientious of anyone, whether they're going through cancer treatments or they lost someone close to them. I find myself responding, like going towards the fire instead of like, oh, I'm not going to touch that one. You know, I could say things like, listen, I don't know what you're going through, and I'm not going to pretend I do, but I'm here for you. You know, or in the past, maybe I would have said, don't worry, now you're feeling, or I don't know, you know, no one, you know, and I think as important as this was to get my story out, like, I think it's really important for people to know about things that are out there. You know, IVF is kind of doesn't get the respect it deserves in terms of emotional stress and how devastating it can be. It's a really hard thing. I've never talked to one person who's been through it and said, I didn't think it was that bad. You know,
it was great.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough on a marriage. It's tough on your self-esteem. It's tough.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Your whole life's on hold. Your work, your social. I mean, everything. It's just all encompassing. And you know, I'm a very positive person. It almost broke me. I was deep in it. I was in the dark. I needed help. I really had a hard time with it. And you know, my biggest advice for anyone out there, you have to talk about it. Whether it's to me, whether it's to someone random close to you, whether it's to your closest, you know, family and friends, especially your partner, whoever that is, you have to get it out. You got to get that gook out, because you should have nothing to be ashamed of. You're not a failure. It's usually not your fault. I mean, it's really not your fault. I remember when I went to my second IVF doctor, we went to RMA. They were amazing. Dr. Scott. And we had 2 failed treatments, or 2 failed retrievals already. And I went to him. He gave me his whole spiel, the beginning, you know, the first appointment spiel. And then afterwards, I asked him, I said, all right, so what can I do? Should I do acupuncture? Should I not drink alcohol? Should I eat more gluten? You know, the whole thing. And he just grabbed my wrist across the table. And he was like, Brett, this is not your fault.
Oh.
I just looked at him and just lost it, because you don't realize how much guilt as women you're holding on your shoulders. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing that you should feel guilty about. You know, your eggs, the quality of them. You have 20-year-olds that can't have kids and 50-year-olds that can, you know, it's just the makeup of your body. And, you know, I'd love to believe that if you're healthy your whole life, you're not going to have fertility issues, but unfortunately that's not the way it goes. So, you know, it's important to know that it's not your fault, you know?
That's right. And absolutely, I don't know the entire fertility population personally, but everyone that I've worked with, 100% of the people that I've worked with feel at fault. Even if it's male factor and there is no female factor, I feel like there's, from the woman's point of view, there's like, well, I stressed him out, or I did, you know, what are the things that I did that caused this, that may have caused this?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I think we just, we do that to ourselves, and it's not fair. It's a part of the process is hard enough. You don't need to do that to yourself.
Yes. No. Forgive yourself. Release it now. Yay. Can you tell
room for the hormonal?
I know. Can you tell
My brother would hear me in the office next to me on phone with clients. He'd be like, okay, all right, let's move on to the next thing. Like, that just come out of my mouth? I should not be in public right now.
Yep. I had that experience in at a baby shower one time. I was just bitter to be there anyway. And somebody was like, of course, the obligatory, so do you have kids? And I'm like, no, I'm infertile. Now what?
Oh my God.
I shouldn't have been in public.
Oh my God. Yeah. You know what? It just happens. I don't know.
I know. Yeah.
There's certain people you have like so much patience for, and others just don't. It has nothing to, you know.
No, there was I had zero patience that day, zero tolerance. But anyway, I forgive myself, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the resolution of your journey?
So, so we ended up transferring our first embryo, and it took after a lot of bleeding. So I want to tell people out there, don't be afraid necessarily if you see any of that, there, it just was it was a rough first trimester. I was kind of waiting for the bad news, but
Oh
I
yeah.
got very lucky and it became a little boy. The pregnancy was very, you know, uneventful, which was good. And then we transferred the second embryo about 12, he's 12 weeks now. So that worked. So we got
Oh wow, congrats.
extremely lucky. We were 2 for 2, which I know is not common and it doesn't go unappreciated one day. So we have 2 little boys and that's how it resolved itself. So
That's so great. And I think I like what you said too, like, yes, there are very difficult moments in parenthood as well. It does not mean there's ingratitude. And being grateful does not mean that it's not hard.
mhm.
So everything exists at the same time. And I feel like people can learn that on their fertility journey too. You know, like this sucks and I'm grateful for these things.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I'm closer with my spouse or I'm closer with my mother or, you know, whatever it is. I was noticing you would appreciate this in the beginning when I began to feel more human again. I noticed that in New Jersey, the traffic blows and, you know, it's like laying on your horn and flipping people off all the time. And I noticed that instead of doing that, started being like, you know, maybe there's somebody sick in their car, you know, like, I don't know what's going, maybe they're having a heart attack. Maybe.
Totally. I swear I do the same exact thing. It kind of simmers you down in 1 second. Like, who knows
Yeah,
what happened in their morning? You know, so many days I would go to work and I would say to myself, nobody here knows that I just started this day with 4 injections to my
that's
stomach.
right.
Um, and I think that I would say to myself, how did their morning start? How did this person, you know, you have no idea what is going on with someone. And to your point, like it gives you a level of just human compassion, I think.
It does. It really does. I
Yeah.
think that's one huge takeaway too.
Mhm.
Oh, Brett, I can't wait to read your book. It's coming. I know it's in the mail. Yay. Um,
It's right here.
yes, please show. Thank you. And it's perfect. It's a
Yes.
image. I love it.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yellow
showing.
for my powerhouse women out there. You got this,
Yes,
okay? Don't give up. Whatever you do,
right.
do not give up.
That's right. And it'll all be linked in the show notes. I'm wondering about any final thoughts or words of hope or wisdom that you have for folks.
You know, a common question I get is how do you know when to give up or how do you know when to stop? And the one thing that I always say is don't ever, if you want to be a mother someday, you will be. It doesn't matter how you get there, whether it's through your own egg, an egg donor, sperm donor, adoption. You will come to a peace that's yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone else tell you you're done with this or you shouldn't do this or you know you'll know in your heart when you've had enough needles and you're ready to move on to a different approach or you'll come to peace. I know I was very at peace with if ours didn't work. I came to peace with adoption. For some reason I couldn't get there with an egg donor in my heart for some reason, but I had some great mentors that had a lot of success, and I knew that that was my path. And don't, again, like I said this before, don't be afraid to change your ending. And I think that's the most important thing, you know, and don't give up. Just do not give up. Just stay positive as long as you can. Just hold on and be a rocky ride, but you can handle it. I assure
It
you.
is a rocky ride. It is a rocky ride. Also, I think people know internally when it's time to stop, just at all. I felt completely at peace with living without kids, completely.
Mhm.
And I think that is a viable option too. And you'll know
Absolutely.
when it's time. It's still not giving up. I like to say, you're not giving up, you're letting go. You're letting go of that need to absolutely grasp onto the things that you must have.
Yeah.
And it has to be this way, but it doesn't. When
That's
you
why I
become,
say, you know, if you want to be a mother, you will be. But when you
Mhm.
get to that point, and I get to that in the book, like, you know, you have to do what's right for yourself. And you will know, no one else can tell you what that means, but you will know in your heart, you
Yeah.
know, learn things about yourself that will launch into the future in the right way, you know, you will.
Yeah. Well, I really can't wait for folks to pick up your book. I think it's going to offer some comic relief and some nostalgia and good feels and hopefully some healing
Pretty
moments.
raw, so you know.
Yes. And
You know, I apologize for any of my clients out there that have to read about my my vagina for the next
yes.
few days.
Thank you. Yes. Let's hear
No
about
problem.
vaginal everything. That's how it is, though, right? It's
That's the way
like
it is. Yeah.
it becomes
Once you've
like
been in syrups long enough, I think you lose your, you know, you're
you
not
do.
embarrassed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you do. And you're like, okay, what are you doing this weekend, Doc? When he's like examine, it's like
Right. It's like no big deal. Right. I
it's like,
remember when I was in labor, they were, you know, covering me in this. I'm like, honestly, or, you know, they put like a little needle in. They're like, is this okay? I'm like, yeah, I went through 5 rounds of IVF. You can put a needle in my eye. I probably won't even realize.
I
It's
know.
funny from a girl who hates needles. I mean, I
Yeah.
started this process cringing, but it's
Yeah.
okay.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, Brett. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure so many others will appreciate reading your story too. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for doing what you do. It's important for us all to stick together.
Yes, it sure is.